Guys, you were talking about the College Football Hall of Fame. I don't know. If he does well enough, maybe Bill Belichick will be in the College Football Hall of Fame at some point. Because I'll be honest with you, when the subject first got brought up, I didn't think it was a real possibility. I just thought it was his name's in the mix, and he wants to let everybody know that he's serious about coaching again. But as it was told, Ollie Connolly of The Guardian was all over this from the get-go. Belichick agrees to reportedly a 5-year deal, and he's going to be the new head coach at North Carolina. Did not see
Congratulations.
This happening. Did not see this happening whatsoever.
There we go.
What does this mean for North Carolina in the sense that because basically the way it was laid out is Belichick presented them, this is how I'm taking the job. Mike Lombardi's already been now named the GM at North Carolina.
Right.
It's kind of wild, man. I don't know.
I think there's so many layers to this. I mean, how many games is he from overcoming Don Shula's record? Is it like 15 or something?
Yeah, 15.
Something like
I
that.
believe
Less
it's 15.
than 20.
To think that, like, you wouldn't want to take, at 72 years old, mind you, North Carolina moved on from Mac Brown, who's 73, and hire Bill Belichick, who's 72. Now, maybe they look at Mac Brown and say, well, we feel like Bill Belichick's a pretty spry 72-year-old. He just dated a 24-year-old, so he's got a lot of juice left in him.
He gonna get out there on campus, getting the date team.
He could recruit. We know that. I think there's that element of it which teams will use against him in recruiting. However, this to me is more about not his legacy. It's about Steve Belichick. You know, I think as he looks at the landscape and says, I want to take over a situation where I know I can give my son an opportunity to come in, be the defensive coordinator, work with my son in my final years of coaching, and be able to then pass that torch along to him, as long as that's, you know, what the agreement is on the way in. And I mean, contractually, they make that work somehow. But that is what I think this has to do with more than anything else. And I also would say, for a lot of the naysayers who are like, why would an NFL coach want to go to college? Because it's never as close to the NFL game as it's ever been than right now. If you look at the fact that he's already got Michael Lombardi coming in to be his general manager, you tell me, what college program is going to have a more sophisticated way of evaluating talent in the transfer portal?
And that's what's about to happen.
High school student evaluation, which, mind you, all of these guys, like Lombardi knows this. There's so many players they look at back to their high school days, do background reference to their high school days, and they'll go, well, this guy was a 5-star. What happened in college? Why didn't he turn out to be that guy? And he ends up being a 3rd, 4th round pick maybe. And yet they still go back to that and say, well, clearly the size, athleticism, talent's there. There's some disconnect. Maybe it was the scheme. Maybe it was the coaching staff. Maybe it was some personal things off the field. They dig into every player they go get. So it's not like, you know, them looking at the high school recruiting profiles is foreign to them. They've done it. They do it all the time. They did it for years when they're in the NFL. So this is an opportunity for Bill Belichick to come into the college game at a time where it's never been closer to the NFL. The way they have the revenue share and essentially kind of a salary cap, I think a lot of people probably look at it and go, well, yeah, how's a place like North Carolina going to compete in NIL and all these other things? It's like, well, I would actually argue that because there's not as many rules governing around what you can do, that you have a huge advantage to have someone like Bill Belichick there who can be creative with how he goes about utilizing the money he has. I mean, the NFL, they're all playing by the same rules on the salary cap. So you have to be kind of creative and figure out how to make it work there. And some years, you just don't have as much cap space. In college, it's kind of the Wild Wild West still. So until there's more guardrails around it, he probably looks at that not as a detriment, but as an opportunity on how they're going to make this work. And I think the last thing I would say that probably, like, I mean, you talked about like the NFL pipeline, and I think that's real. I think when they walk into their room and he shows you all these Super Bowl rings, and that's going to hit home. I mean, outside of making money, which they'll have to share with players and they'll be able to allocate, what else do you want as a player? You want to go play in the NFL. And you're going to have a guy who's going to have the highest recommendation of anyone. Do you know who the number 2 candidate was for this head coaching job?
Who?
It was Tommy Rees, who's up with the Cleveland Browns. He interviewed a couple of times. He would have been the guy if not for Bill Belichick. Do you know who was the biggest advocate for Tommy Rees?
Who?
Nick Saban. So when you think about like how big like a Nick Saban or a Bill Belichick, how big their word carries, think about all these players who are going to have the stamp of approval from a Bill Belichick with all these NFL franchises and teams?
I think first and foremost, Bill Belichick is going to have more fun than he's ever had in his entire coaching career. I think that's first and foremost, because I think that there's the level of pressure that comes with being an NFL coach. There's just a lot that's connected to it. That's first and foremost. That's first opinion. But then I look at the setup of all of it, and he said it when he did his interview. He said, if I get the resources necessary, this could be a very attractive job. You mentioned, Q, during your explanation in terms of, well, will North Carolina be able to compete in the NIL space? Well, people would have said, would Colorado have been able to compete in the NIL space? And look at what Deion's done. And I'll say this. When you're talking about businesses and resources that can come to you in terms of putting your dollars behind something and you know, whether it be ad dollars, whether it be just getting behind whatever it is you're getting behind business-wise, I can guarantee you Bill Belichick has a ton. His Rolodex of companies out there that would pour into what he's doing, there's a ton of them, because they probably have all paid him to come in and talk to their companies and corporations. He's got a ton of them. So he's not going to be short in resources to be able to bring to the NIL space. Now, you bring in a great evaluator and Lombardi. You're going to structure this thing. College football now has to be structured like a professional franchise. It has to be. It just has to be, because that's where it's all going. Bill Belichick gets a unique opportunity to do it at the front end of what NIL is doing and the transfer portal is doing to college football and the realignments and everything that's going on. So for him to have the opportunity to bring that structure, who's going to have a better infrastructure for a professional team and how that should look at the college level than Bill Belichick? I would say the one thing that also came to mind that I wonder, but now you got to worry about the academics, like all the football aspects of it, the recruitment, all those different things. I think those things will all work themselves out. But as it applies to what does it look like, will he, do you just get staff to be able to handle certain things that you didn't have to? Like, you don't have to worry about if guys are on time for class. You got to worry about if they're on time for meetings. You know what I mean? Like, does he treat that the same way for guys struggling in the –
Hold on.
Go ahead.
We're talking about a guy who dealt with some off the field stuff with some of his players.
Yeah.
I think they'll be okay. Sure. I think guys who
but it is an element.
North Carolina will be okay.
Well, North Carolina is true. I mean, it is a high academic standard there. But I just
Coach,
think
are you
that
mad? Did you kill anybody? No. All right, you're good. You can start a tight end for us.
Dang.
I think they'll be.
That's where you're going with it. Dang. Okay.
Did you murder him? No, Coach. All right, you're good.
I guess you're right. I guess. I mean, it's not like he's going to Miami or anything.
Damn!
I'm joking. That's a joke. That's a joke.
I can't wait to see how it works out. And I do find it interesting that you've seen coaches like Gus Malzahn, wants to be a coordinator. Kelly wanted to be a coordinator. Jeff Hafley left and went to be a coordinator in the NFL. They were all head coaches. And Belichick's like, no, I'll go do that. Like, I'll go be a part of that world. Yeah. Like, I like the fact that he already had a structure in place and the fact that he gets to do it his way. And he probably looked around the NFL and was like, I don't think I'm going to have that opportunity here. And if I can set my son up, why not make the jump?
Do you want me to give you the last kicker in all this? If you're the head coach of an NFL franchise, one of the biggest difficulties is the power struggle with the general manager, right? Like, sometimes the general manager is the direct report. Sometimes he's, the owner's guy. Or it's the owner, right? There's the owner that you have to battle with in regards to how much money you're spending in free agency and how you're structuring, et cetera, and even like stadium upgrades, all that stuff. When you are the head coach in a college program, and there's multiple programs in that state, but he's getting $10 million a year in this deal. He's one of the highest paid employees in the state. Dang. If you think about that, like, go look at Ohio State. Does anyone get paid more in the state of Ohio that would be kind of like a state employee than Ryan Day? No. So you have so much more power and control and autonomy than people realize, as compared to constantly having to answer to a owner, or battle with a general manager who's trying to undercut you. That's the other thing. When you talk about control, some people would say like the last dictators in the United States are college football coaches.
And I ain't lying.